My best friend was a con artist who scammed me out of $92,000. Here's how I got justice. Quote, with trembling hands, I started reviewing every record from Mary's case that I could find. I discovered she had lied to me about everything. I suddenly couldn't breathe. Unquote. Jonathan Walton, HuffPost guest writer. Quote, I can help, unquote, she said, and with just those 3 words, a 4-year nightmare began to unfold as I fell hard for one of the oldest cons in the book, the inheritance scam. But this scheme wasn't cooked up by some fictional Nigerian prince soliciting me through a sketchy email. I fell under the spell of an immensely lovable woman who inserted herself into my life and became my best friend. Unfortunately, she was also an international con artist on the run from the authorities, and I was about to become one of her many marks. She scammed me out of nearly $100,000 using a series of brilliant confidence tricks as she simultaneously destroyed my sense of self and darkened my once joyful outlook. And as she was ruining my life, she was also scamming dozens of others around the world by impersonating psychics, mortgage brokers, psychologists, lawyers, travel agents, and even pretending to be a cancer victim. She was a true, quote, queen of the con, unquote, utilizing disguises and even plastic surgery to offer her appearance for one crime to the next. And she might have gotten away with cheating many more people if she hadn't unwittingly turned me into a relentless vigilante. Because instead of completely falling apart in the wake of her scam and the bankruptcy she forced me into, I somehow found the strength I didn't know I had to pick myself up from the wreckage. And I fought back. I started my own investigation into her scams, uncovered other victims, and painstakingly brought her to justice. Today, she's sitting in a jail cell in Los Angeles County, probably wondering how on earth she became the victim of one of her own victims. Well, allow me to explain. She introduced herself to me as Mayor Smith in May 2013 when she joined a group of angry neighbors in my living room to discuss what to do about losing access to our building's swimming pool due to a legal spat with a neighboring building. Quote, I can help, unquote, she told us. Quote, my boyfriend is a lawyer who can get the pool back, unquote. I liked her immediately. We all did. She was brash, funny, extremely intelligent and outspoken. Ironically, she came across as a woman who always, quote, told it like it is, unquote. She also came across as an incredibly wealthy woman. She wore $1,200 Jimmy Choos and once showed me her closet filled with more than 250 pairs. That's $300,000 in shoes alone, I thought to myself, but I later discovered they were all fake. After our initial meeting in my apartment that night, Mayor invited my husband, Pablito, and me to dinner. And over the next year, she frequently wined and dined us at fancy restaurants and always insisted on picking up the bill. Quote, I love you guys, unquote, she convincingly pleaded. Quote, I have a lot of money. Let me pay, unquote. We'd hang out almost every evening in our barbecue area, exchanging intimacies under the cool LA sky. Mare told us she was originally from Ireland, and one night she pointed to a framed document hanging in her living room. Quote, this is the Irish Constitution, unquote, she said. Quote, see that signature at the bottom? That's my great uncle's, unquote. Since my knowledge of Ireland was scant, I believed her. I had no idea that, like her shoes, that tail was also fake. Mare brought me Irish tea and pastries and regaled me with stories of how when she was a young girl, her grandmother, who was supposedly in the Irish Republican Army, would bring her to the top of a bridge and teach Mare how to hurl Molotov cocktails down on British soldiers. I was captivated and horrified, but her stories about her family were all lies too. When I tearfully confided in her that part of my family had disowned me for being gay, she pounced, quote, my family disowned me too, unquote, she said as she fought back tears, quote, they're trying to get me disinherited, unquote. All of a sudden, we weren't just friends. We were two discarded souls bounding over our incredibly painful family circumstances. Mare told me that an uncle, the patriarch of her family, recently died and her cousins were dividing up an estate worth 25 million euros. She says she was supposed to receive 5 million euros, the equivalent of $6.5 million at the time, as her share of inheritance. As months passed, she frequently showed me angry text messages and emails from her Irish cousins threatening that she wouldn't get a dime of the inheritance. I didn't realize that Mare actually created those phone and email accounts herself to impersonate her cousins as part of her scheme. Mare told me she had taken a lot of family money with her when she left Ireland many years ago, so she never needed to work. However, she claimed she enjoyed working, so she got a job selling luxury vacations at a travel agency in Los Angeles that her family did a lot of business with. She said her family's association with the company made it easier for her to secure employment there. 14 months into our friendship, Mare and I were like sister and brother. We even began ending our phone calls by telling each other, quote, "I love you," unquote. She told me that her barristers, I had to Google what that word meant, were having trouble trying to secure her inheritance and that they had warned her about a clause in her uncle's will that stated that if any family member was convinced of a felony, they would forfeit their share of the inheritance. Mare was building up the framework for her con in such enthralling detail that I became an actual player in scamming myself. Instead of telling me the next step in her deceitful story, she got me to tell her. Quote, "You better be careful," unquote, I cautioned her. Quote, "Since your family does a lot of business with the travel agency you work for, one of your disgruntled cousins might try and set you up to get you convicted of a felony to keep your share of the inheritance from you," unquote. I'd read news stories about husbands knocking off their wives for $1 million insurance policies. We were talking about 6.5 million here, and according to the emails and texts I saw, many of her family members certainly appeared to hate her. Why wouldn't they set her up? I thought. On July 8th, 2014, my phone rang. Quote, "You have a collect call from It's Mare, an inmate at Century Regional Detention Facility. Press 1 to accept," unquote, the computerized voice instructed me. I quickly pressed 1. Quote, "You were right," unquote, she sobbed. Quote, "I was arrested today. My family set me up to make it look like I stole $200,000 from my job," unquote. Quote, "I told you this would happen," unquote. I yelled into the phone. I was distraught. I quickly found a bail bondsman and paid him $4,200 to get her out of jail. That's when I first learned that her legal name was Mary Ann Smith, not Mare Smith. She paid me back the $4,200 the very next day when she was released from jail. Or, rather, the married man she was dating at the time paid me back the next day. Little did I, or he, know it, but she was in the process of scamming him too. As the months passed, Mare showed me emails from her lawyers assuring her that the criminal case against her was falling apart. I had no idea those emails were also from fake accounts she had created herself. Then, almost 3 years into our friendship, she told me the district attorney prosecuting her case had frozen her bank accounts. She was devastated, so I started lending her money. She had immediately paid back the $4,200 I used to bail her out of jail, so I felt confident she'd pay me back any other money I loaned her. But that's the thing. The term con artist is short for confidence artist because these individuals are skilled at gaining your confidence, and then once they've attained it, they use it to scam you out of your money. Over the course of several months, I loaned Mare nearly $15,000. You'd think I'd be worried about giving her that much money, but I wasn't. After all, she was not only my best friend, but she claimed she was about to inherit millions of dollars. At least that's what all the emails from her barrister said. So I never even considered the idea that anything sinister could be taking place. One day, Mayor called me and said the DA was now demanding $50,000 to dismiss the criminal case against her. I didn't have $50,000 in cash, but I did have an 840 credit score, so I let her charge the $50,000 on my credit cards using her PayPal account to get the criminal case against her dropped, thereby opening the pathway for her to secure her $6.5 million inheritance and pay me back. I had only ever been to court for speeding tickets at that point. I knew so little about the criminal justice system. Besides, Mare was now like a family member. I just never imagined that she could be scamming me. A few months later, I was shocked to find out Mar had been arrested again. She said the judge in her case considered her charging my credit cards with her PayPal account money laundering and punished her with 30 days in jail. The charge was not a felony. She said it was just a, quote, slap on the wrist, unquote, and she assured me once again that as soon as she got out of jail and received her inheritance, she would pay me back in full. Mar called me collect from jail every day and begged me not to visit her. Quote, I don't want you to see me like this, unquote, she said, but I insisted. So I logged onto the jail's website to schedule a visit, and that's when everything fell apart and the true devastation she wrought on my life started to reveal itself. The jail's website showed there had been no, quote, slap on the wrist, unquote. Mara was serving time for felony grand theft. I took the day off work and immediately rushed down to a Los Angeles courthouse. With trembling hands, I started reviewing every record from Mara's case I could find. I discovered she had lied to me about everything. I suddenly couldn't breathe. That $50,000 I let her charge on my credit cards was really to pay $40,000 as part of a plea agreement to a felony grand theft charge she faced for stealing more than $200,000 from the travel agency she worked for. Had she not been able to come up with that $40,000, she would have received a 5-year jail sentence, not the measly 30 days she actually served. I discovered that her bank accounts had never been frozen. There was no wealthy Irish family or inheritance. She's not even Irish. Those were all lies she used to entrap me. I went home and collapsed in my husband's arms. I didn't cry. I wailed. Quote, how could I let this happen to us? Unquote. I sobbed over and over again. I was inconsolable. Eventually, my pain was replaced by breathtaking anger and determination to do something. First, I confronted Mar in the parking lot outside our apartment building the day she was released from jail. I told her I knew she wasn't Irish. I knew no one froze her bank accounts. I knew there was no inheritance. She emphatically denied everything. Quote, that's not true, Jonathan, unquote. That's not true. She pleaded over and over again as tears streamed down her face. But I had finally learned that those tears, like everything else in her life, were a complete fabrication, and I was done believing anything she had to say. I balled up my fist, clenched my jaw, and walked away. We never spoke again. I went to the police days later in March 2017 and filed a report. The officer interviewing me seemed skeptical that there was anything they could do. Quote, don't give strangers your money, unquote, were his parting words. So I started my own investigation. I dug up Mar Smith's yearbook and learned that she was born Mary Ann Andell in Maine and graduated from Bangor High in 1987. She later moved to Tennessee, where, according to her estranged family, she told everyone in town she had breast cancer and allegedly scammed her friends and neighbors out of thousands for treatments. They told me Mar was oddly obsessed with wanting to be Irish, so much so that in 2000 she went to Northern Ireland on vacation and ended up marrying a local and then stayed in the country for 9 years. In the same way that wooden stakes kill vampires and silver bullets kill werewolves, publicity kills con artists. I began turning my pain into a profound sense of purpose. I started an online blog and detailed how Mar had scammed me. Soon, Mar's victims from all over the world started reaching out. I learned that she scammed $10,000 from one victim by impersonating a psychologist, according to allegations in a police report. She tricked our landlord out of $12,000 in rent by pretending to have cancer. I did some sleuthing and found out that Mar had low blood iron and would purposely avoid iron-rich foods so she could strategically get admitted into hospitals for transfusions. While sitting in a real hospital bed for a few hours, she'd ask a nurse to take a picture and then email that photo to her victims to better sell her cancer story. She used this particular scam a lot. I even got a call from a police detective in Northern Ireland. He told me authorities in Belfast had been looking for Mary Ann Smith for years. The detective said she had worked as a mortgage broker in 2008 and had scammed many other people and then vanished. And these were just some of the stories I discovered. All in all, Mar Smith used at least 23 different aliases. In this video, she goes by Mar Ain as she tries to convince people she's psychic. She worked as a psychic for years, scamming the most vulnerable victims by using their innermost secrets and confidences against them. She's also been charged with felonies for fraud and grand theft in Florida and Tennessee under alias Marianne Welsh. The Los Angeles Police Department ended up spending 11 months investigating my case. I called them every day and became a huge pain in their ass. Finally, in early 2018, Mar was arrested at the halfway house where she was hiding and charged with grand theft for scamming me. She was then released on her own recognizance, which was a huge mistake. 1 month before trial, Mar filed a fraudulent restraining order asserting that I was threatening her with violence. I was forced to lose another $1,500 to her scams, the cost of hiring an attorney to fight her bogus claim. Quote, if a judge grants the restraining order, you would be prevented from testifying against her at her criminal trial, unquote, my lawyer explained. I was apoplectic. Could this be her checkmate move? I wondered. Thankfully, a prudent judge refused to grant the restraining order, and her criminal trial proceeded as scheduled. 4 victims testified against Mar in early 2019, and a mountain of irrefutable evidence was presented by the prosecution. Though she was only being charged with scamming me, the judge allowed testimony from several other people she conned to demonstrate a pattern. Mar did not testify in her own defense. As the witnesses described how she had scammed them, Mar sat there with an emotionless look on her face. That was probably her biggest tell to the jury. As brilliant of an actress as she proved to be while she was conning people, remarkably, she did not know how to act innocent. The only defense her attorney had for the jury was that I was supposedly making the whole story up and that I had persuaded all of the other witnesses, people I didn't even know before Mar scammed me, to lie under oath so I could make a compelling documentary about it. And he was terrifyingly convincing. I had, in fact, decided to make a documentary about Mar. When I took the stand to testify against her, her attorney asked me why. Quote, I want to warn people about her, unquote, I responded. Quote, by the time I'm done with Mary Ann Smith, the world will know her face so she can never scam anyone ever again, unquote. Testifying at trial was particularly grueling because the prosecutor went over each dollar Mar scammed from me in extreme detail. Having to relive that experience in front of a room full of strangers ignited fury and embarrassment and regret in a new, especially painful way. I was an emotional wreck. I spent 2 years doggedly pursuing Mary Ann Smith. It consumed me. I had to file for bankruptcy because of what she had done to me. In the 24 court appearances I made even before the actual trial, including continuances, pre-trial motions, and hearings, meant I had to miss a lot of work and lost even more money, not to mention the cost of hiring 6 private investigators in multiple states and countries to ferret out all her scams. But damn, it was worth it. On January 9, 2019, Mary Ann Smith was found guilty of scamming me out of $91,784. She was sentenced to 5 years behind bars. Out of all the victims I uncovered during my investigation, only 2 of them had ever reported her to the police, and that enabled her to continue scamming people for years before she met me. Most of her victims, like most victims of any con artist, were too ashamed to tell anyone what happened to them. I'm ashamed too, but my desire to stop her from hurting other people is much stronger than my shame. I'm forever changed by my experience of getting conned. I'm now suspicious of everyone and everything. I subscribe to multiple criminal databases and I background check everyone. Often I suss out even the most minuscule inconsistencies in someone's story upon meeting them and throw it in their face, demanding an explanation. Making new friends is not something I'm good at anymore, but that's not something that I can really help. I was taken advantage of by someone I truly trusted and loved. And when you're shattered in this specific unthinkable way, it's impossible to go back to who you were before. While my life may never be the same, I hope others can learn from my experience with Mary Ann Smith and by reading my story, avoid being swindled themselves. If you meet someone new whose backstory is filled with drama and intrigue, or even just really unusual circumstances, especially if there's money involved, there's a good chance they're trying to scam you. You might not ever encounter someone as convincing or cunning or as deceitful as I did, but confidence games are more common than you think, and your entire life can change because you have trusted someone who wants what you have and will stop at nothing to get it. Jonathan Walton is a reality TV producer by day and a justice-seeking vigilante in his off hours. His experience putting a con artist in prison has woken him to a new calling in life, helping other victims hunt down their con artists in the name of justice and closure and healing. You can reach him through his website, jonathanwalton.com. This article originally appeared on HuffPost in August 2019 and was updated in December 2020. Original article courtesy of Buzzfeed and link below.